Hello and welcome to Life Reviewed. This is episode 8 and part 8 of my Planet of the Apes retrospective. Today I'm going to be looking at Dawn of the Planet of the Apes from 2014. It was directed by Matt Reeves, written by Mark Baumbach, Rick Jaffa, and Amanda Silver. It stars Andy Serkis as Caesar, Jason Clarke as Malcolm, Gary Oldman as Dreyfus, Kerry Russell as Ellie, Toby Kebbell as Koba, Terry Notary as Rocket, Karen Knovel returns as Maurice, and Judy Greer as Cornelia. So let's go over the plot. 10 years after the pandemic of the deadly ALZ-113 virus, or simian flu, the worldwide human population has been drastically reduced, with only a few genetically immune to the virus. Apes, with genetically enhanced intelligence caused by the same virus, have started to build a civilization of their own. Caesar is the chimpanzee leader of an ape colony in the Muir Woods near San Francisco. Caesar's son Blue Eyes and his friend Ash encounter a man named Carver in the woods, who panics and shoots Ash, wounding him. Carver's party, led by Malcolm, arrive while a number of apes join Blue Eyes and Ash. Caesar orders the humans to leave, and they flee to their community in San Francisco, centered around the Tower, a partially finished skyscraper. Prompted by Koba, a scarred bonobo, who holds a grudge against humans for experimental mistreatment, Caesar brings an army of apes to the Tower. There he announces that while the apes do not want war, they will fight to defend their home. He demands that the humans stay in their territory. Malcolm convinces his fellow leader Dreyfus to give him time to take a small team to the forest to reconcile with the apes and gain access to a hydroelectric dam in their territory, which could provide long-term power to the city. Malcolm meets with Caesar, who allows the humans to work on the generator on the condition that they surrender their guns. As Malcolm, his wife Ellie, and son Alexander work, they bond with the apes. Mutual distrust of both sides gradually subsides until Caesar discovers a gun Carver had hidden and orders the humans to leave. He later allows the humans one extra day to work on the dam after Ellie uses medicine to save Caesar's wife, Cornelia. Distrustful of the apes, Dreyfus arms his community using an armory. Maintaining his distrust of humans, Koba discovers the armory and later confronts Caesar, accusing him of loving humans more than apes. In response, Caesar severely beats Koba, but refrains from killing him. Koba returns to the armory, where he takes an assault rifle and kills 2 guards. Returning home, he secretly kills Carver. The generator is repaired, restoring power to the city. During the celebration, Koba sets fire to the apes' home, then, unseen to anyone else, shoots Caesar, who falls from the settlement's main tree. In the subsequent panic, Koba takes charge, implicating Carver in the shooting and convincing the apes to attack the humans. He leads them into San Francisco, where they plunder the armory and charge the tower, with many casualties. The apes breach the building and imprison the humans as Dreyfus flees underground. When Ash refuses Koba's orders to kill unarmed humans, citing Caesar's teachings, Koba kills Ash and imprisons any ape still loyal to Caesar. Malcolm's family finds Caesar barely alive and transports him to his former house in San Francisco. Caesar reveals that Koba shot him, realizing that apes can be as corrupt and violent as humans. When Malcolm sneaks into the settlement to find medical supplies for Caesar, he encounters Blue Eyes, who spares him before learning that his father is still alive. After reconciling with Caesar, Blue Eyes returns to the tower and frees the imprisoned humans and apes. Malcolm leads the apes into the tower, where he finds Dreyfus. He learns that the return of electricity allowed Dreyfus's men to make radio contact with survivors at a military base, who are now coming to fight the apes. Caesar confronts Koba at the top of the tower. As they fight, Dreyfus detonates C4 charges that destabilize the tower, at the cost of his own life. Koba starts shooting at the apes, but Caesar tackles him off the ledge. While clinging on a metal girder, Koba is rejected as an ape by Caesar and dropped to his death. Malcolm and Caesar acknowledge their friendship, with Malcolm warning of the approaching human military. Caesar warns that the humans will never forgive the apes for their attack, and convinces Malcolm to leave with his family. The film ends as Caesar stands before a kneeling mass of apes. So I'm not even going to be able to hide it, so I'll come out early and say this is my favorite Planet of the Apes film. Uh, I love the original film. I think Conquest is fantastic, and when we get to War, I'll talk about how I feel about that movie in relation to this one. But there's something about this one that makes it feel like the Empire Strikes Back of this franchise. It's incredibly dark. It is, has an awesome villain. Definitely, without question, the best villain of any Planet of the Apes film. Um, General Ursus, Atar, any of these cool villains that have popped up, Dr. Zaius in the past. Um, Nobody, no ape villain, no villain, period, can compare to Koba because he's easy to relate to. You can understand that he was tortured his whole life. Tests had tests performed on him his whole life, and he has no trust of humans. And Caesar, who is really empathetic to humans because of how he was raised, just there's such a strong contrast between them, and it creates some really fantastic drama. So right away we open with maybe the best scene in all of Planet of the Apes, at least maybe the coolest, where Caesar has a hunting party out. He's out hunting with his son, and they're hunting elk, which is really cool because chimpanzees are definitely meat eaters, and they've formed this colony out in the woods, and immediately they're talking with sign language, and they go on this hunt for the elk, and they're chasing them, and then they're attacked by a bear, and it's Koba who actually comes out and rescues Blue Eyes, Caesar's son. And it just right away, within the first 5 minutes, I knew I was in love with this film. Like, this is the perfect advancement of the story. It's been, however many years. I think I want to say it's been like 5 years. And, oh no, it's been 10 years. And so Caesar's son is, grown up, and he's married, and they've built a colony. They're all using sign language or communicating. Caesar can actually talk more. And, his relationship has grown with Rocket and Maurice and Koba. And I think this was a really intelligent decision to make this jump. I'm in the process of reading Dawn of the Planet of the Apes Firestorm, the prequel novel. And that does, talk about, about 5 minutes after the Rise ends, about them going into the Muir Woods and sort of on the run from humans right after they attack the bridge. And at the same time, the virus is breaking out. And, that could have been the second film. And reading the book, it feels, very much like it could have been the second film. But I think this is a better choice to jump ahead and sort of see the different stages of Caesar's life. And they'll do this again for War, which again I think is a good choice. And there's a prequel novel there that I'll also be reading. So we start out with this hunt, and then we go back to the village, and we see Caesar's wife. We see what they've built. They've the first the beginnings of their colony. They've got their giant tree that they live in, and they've sort of built construction around that. So then we'll jump over to the humans, and the problem with the humans in this film is similar to that of the previous film, and we'll see it again in War for the Planet of the Apes. And I think they're just weaker characters, and it may have a lot to do with the contrast of how awesome the ape characters are. So I don't think necessarily that I can continue to knock these films for having somewhat weaker human characters, because it just, in contrast, these films are really about the apes. And so we do get introduced to Malcolm and Carver and Malcolm's wife and son, and then Gary Oldman, who every time I watch this movie, I forget Gary Oldman was even in it. I'm reading the novel now, and Dreyfus, his character, is in that book. So at least maybe some of his character will be like fleshed out so that I can have a better understanding when I watch this movie the next time. But none of these characters are particularly memorable, and they do serve more for a catalyst to have Koba really turn to the dark side and have Caesar sort of continue his empathy for humans. And so this Carver guy is kind of really doesn't like apes, and he immediately shoots Ash, and which is who's Rocket's son, sort of wounds him, but out of fear. And Caesar says, "Go, like get out of my woods," which they're like astounded to see an ape talk. And so they go back and they tell Dreyfus, Gary Oldman. They tell some of the people there, and then Caesar does what I think is the smart move, which is to kind of show strength by riding into the city with his entire ape force and saying like, humans live here, we live here, no problem. We just live apart. But if you want war, we'll be ready. And then they go back. Well, in a somewhat crazy but brave move, Malcolm says, "Hey, we need to actually go talk to Caesar because we need to get that generator working. That's the dam that they're living on." And so he takes a small group, his family, up there, and they kind of start talking to Caesar, and Caesar agrees, and which Koba does not like, and Koba wants to prove that they're up to no good. And so this Carver guy is really up to no good. He's Caesar says, "No guns, you can't have any weapons," and they say that's fine, and Carver hides his weapon, which will come out later, and which that's Caesar's like, "No, really, you need to get out of here." And at the same time, Koba is like taking a commando squad to check the city and sees that they are have an armory and they have lots of weapons, and so he sneaks up on Carver, kills him, and takes a gun and basically shoots Caesar and tries to blame it on the humans. And we think Caesar's dead. He's fallen into the darkness. I mean, we can assume he's alive, but he's out of the picture for a bit. And he basically gets all the apes totally like crazy, revved up, sets fire to everything, and then we have this amazing battle in the city where Koba is leading the charge, and there's like tons and tons of apes getting killed and humans getting killed, and there's this Koba cam, I call it Koba cam shot. It was in the trailer and then in the film where Koba sort of like it's almost like he's like got a GoPro attached to this tank where he's like killing the people in the tank and then like riding with it, like shooting the gun and like just riding into the city. And then there's this shot of him on a horse with the machine gun, like riding into the city. He's so badass. He's so evil, and it's just like he doesn't have the same leadership as Caesar. And so you see this a lot in these type of characters and in real life, where people think that they have oh, I could lead better than the person in charge, and then come to find out, well, they may have some other attributes. Leadership may not be their thing, and that's certainly Koba. Like Koba, he's charismatic, and he certainly gets everybody revved up and amped up to go kill a bunch of humans. He doesn't have that same leadership ability, and when the other apes kind of look to him, he doesn't have that ability to really inspire them. And so it really comes out when they're in the building, and he tells Ash, Rocket's son, to go kill this human, and he says no, and Koba responds by throwing Ash off of the balcony and killing him, which apes are not killing apes in this franchise so far. Like, apes are not killing each other. And so this is kind of shocking to all the apes, and it sort of draws a line in the sand. And there's people who are loyal to Caesar, and there's people that are kind of, whether out of fear or whatever, loyal to Koba. And so Koba locks up all of the people, Maurice, I say people, but all the apes, Maurice, and anyone loyal to Caesar in the cage. And then this is where Caesar sort of re-enters the film. He's injured, but Malcolm and his family help him. They bring him to his old house in San Francisco, where he sees pictures of him and James Franco, which is nice, and sort of gets to, they see where he came from and that he was raised, with humans. And then when Malcolm is out in the city, that's where he meets Caesar's son, and Caesar's son has an opportunity to kill him and doesn't. And so then Malcolm brings him back to meet his father, and his father says, it was Koba that shot me, not Carver. And so Blue Eyes tells Caesar, well, they've locked up all the apes that are loyal to you. And so that's when they, do a rescue mission. So it all culminates in this battle on the top of the tower, on the scaffolding, with Koba versus Caesar. And it's like a classic hero versus villain showdown. It's a really awesome fight. Koba's unloading guns into the other apes. He, hits Maurice, and Caesar is like out of his mind, like in a rage. And at the same time, Dreyfus is trying to use C4 to blow up the tower, which he does, killing himself. It's sort of, it's so inconsequential to what's happening with the apes that the human characters, again, are just sort of flat. And at the same time, they say they've gotten in radio contact with a military, the military base, which is going to show up later in war, that they had gotten in radio contact. And then I'm assuming it will be flushed out in, it's called The War for the Planet of the Apes Revelations, the novel that takes place between this film and the next one. But they blow up the tower with the C4, which basically creates a set piece for Koba and Caesar to be fighting while this thing is falling down, which is just like a total spectacle. And so then eventually it ends with Caesar dropping Koba to his death, and Koba tries to use apes aren't supposed to kill apes. And Caesar's like, you are no ape, because Koba's committed so many atrocities against apes and humans. He's no better than the humans that he hated, is basically what, Caesar is implying there, and drops Koba to his death. And then the film wraps up with Caesar, telling Malcolm and his family to kind of run, and that, war is coming, and then he has all the apes sort of like, he regains like complete control over the apes, and they all sort of kneel in front of him, and he walks through them like some sort of messiah, and the film ends, on a shot of Caesar's face. There was supposed to be an ending credit scene with a battleship cruising into San Francisco, and they cut it because they apparently, the director didn't want to really box themselves in on the script for War, which is obviously a good thing that they didn't, because War does not take place, in San Francisco with a battleship of humans arriving. So it was a good cut. There was rumor of an extended cut of this film getting released on the Blu-ray. That never happened. But the one interesting thing at the end of the film is at the end of the credits, as it's wrapping up, you hear this audio of some apes sort of, kind of like making noise and screaming a little bit or whatever, and then they're digging through what sounds like they're digging through some rubble, and then you hear heavy breathing that sounds like Koba, as if some apes that may have been loyal to Koba have rescued him, and he's still alive. And when we get to War for the Planet of the Apes, I'll tell you about how, obviously that doesn't show itself in War for the Planet of the Apes, but how that could be a possibility for future films, and my thoughts on where the franchise should go after War. So, in the end, this is my favorite Planet of the Apes film. I think there is, the human characters are forgettable, but they provide the perfect catalyst for the events that take place in this film. for me personally, this is a 10 out of 10 film. This is an absolutely fantastic movie. It's most likely my favorite movie of that year, but I'd have to go back and look. But certainly one of them. And this elevated this franchise to a completely different level of, serious, the serious tone and darkness in this movie really shows the quality. This level of quality in a blockbuster film is almost unparalleled, and we'll see that again in the next film. So thank you for joining me on this review of Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. My next review will be up very shortly for War for the Planet of the Apes, though I won't be going off any Blu-ray material. This is just from a theatrical viewing, so I've only seen the film one time, so I won't have quite as much behind-the-scenes stuff as I had for the previous ones. So thank you.